Hi there, my name is Brooks from Character Design Forge. A few weeks ago I made a video called Stop Saving Your Ideas. Now of all the things that I talk about here, this is the thing that I'm still struggling with the most. Now between a lack of time and being overly protective of characters that I'd like to use in future stories, I end up getting blocked up with ideas. Now it's not doing you or me any good to hoard these ideas away and put off working on them. So I'm going to do things a little bit differently. I'm going to be sharing the process of me making these characters with you, and hopefully share some practical stuff along the way. Now on May 18th of this year, I did the first concept for a character called Port. Now the idea being that he'd be part of a short story or mini-comic called I Got This. So this week I did a few more sketches. Port is supposed to be a member of a traveling group, kind of like you'd see in an RPG or a video game, where there's 4 or so characters, a big beefy fighter, a nimble rogue, and some kind of caster or tactician, and then there is a support class, like a medic or healer, and that's what Port is. Now the story starts off with him being severely underappreciated despite all of the work that he does for his team. I had the general concept of the story first before any idea of the visuals for Port. Now I liked the design up here, but he really only has the appearance of being tired, not necessarily overburdened like he is once you add this oversized backpack. The ears up here were cool, but I changed them to this more rounded bell-end ear that you see down here, mainly because I ended up basing Port a lot off of the personality of a Cocker Spaniel that I had growing up, who was really curmudgeonly, but overall harmless. Now at this point I started working on another digital concept for Port, and the art around here never really looks graceful or eloquent, mostly because you're trying to button up any problems or awkward sections of your character. Right at the beginning, the walking staff I had him holding started to make a weird tangent over his ear, so I started moving things around so that it wasn't covering that up. I think later on I end up pulling that ear back a bit to match the other. Once I know what his head will look like underneath, I start drawing his hat on a new layer here in Photoshop, just in case I want to do another version, I can pull it away without any problems. One slightly subtle thing that I'm doing here is keeping the amount of detail on this character light on the top and bottom of him, and complicating things a bit more in that midsection. This is a good practice to keep in mind for where you want to focus the viewer on your character. Additionally here, I specifically laid out the detail so that it looks like Port is compressing, a little bit like a spring. It looks like he's squeezing together in the middle. He has all of this stuff that's too heavy for him, and a lot of stress from his teammates. I have something in mind for the other members of his party that I'll have to share with you as I develop them, and it's actually a great practice to use an exercise I call Group of 4. This is where you try and develop 4 characters that are all visually distinct from one another. It starts easy, you just make 2 characters that are opposites from each other, but then you throw in a third and it becomes more complicated. And ultimately, I found that 4 characters is a really good exercise. I had those little green health symbols on him a few different places in the previous sketches. I ended up putting them on his knees because of the really abnormal leg shape he has. There's definitely a little bit of goat influence in his design. He has those baggy pants and little hooves, so giving your eye a marker for where the kneecap is facing informs you about the leg a lot more clearly. I didn't do a full character sheet for Port here, still just a concept, but I thought it'd be good to make sure his mouth could open, and I added a front-facing view too. At this point I move on to some ink. Now this was a bit of an interesting challenge because I'm recording my screen and I'm trying to keep my canvas still, but with inking I'm usually zoomed in up close for smooth lines. So it's already making you a little self-conscious to record yourself making art, and then keeping everything at this view was a little extra, but I think it turned out okay. At this point there's still things that looked fine before, but now you're realizing that they need to be adjusted. So you see me flipping the art back and forth to give me a fresh view of the drawing. This is super valuable. You need to be doing this either digitally or even holding your sketchbook page up to the light from behind to get the mirror image of your art. It's such a good thing to do to get a fresh perspective. A lot of the same process for color here as in my video on the fastest way to make comics in Photoshop. Making sure that your colors are all of similar values and hues relatively is important because you can always shift all the colors together later with adjustments. I'm coloring the line art, which can take some time. I'm also laying a darker version of the color layer over the color layer and erasing away my light source for the shading. I'm happy with how this turned out. I'm glad to be back in the saddle, spending some time designing characters in a week instead of only talking about them, as much as I love helping people out. Most likely next week I'll have some cool news to share with you guys, along with a handy ebook that I've made on character design that you're going to be able to get for free. That's it from me today. I'm making new videos every week at characterdesignforge.com. Subscribing on YouTube lets you know when new videos are available. Thank you for watching, and have fun creating.